The dull ache in Liam O'Connell's temples was a familiar companion, a steady throb that matched the relentless pace of his double shift. Another Saturday, another blur of indifferent faces and echoing footsteps in the sprawling Oakwood Mall. He scanned the shoppers, his gaze sweeping, automatic. Suddenly, a strangled cry, sharp and thin, pierced cacophony. Not a child's playful shriek, but something laced with genuine fear. Liam's head snapped up. Across the wide concourse, near the glittering facade of Valerian's jewelers, he saw her, the elegant, silver-haired woman he often observed, the one who always looked so solitary, stumbling, a dark figure yanking viciously at her handbag. There was no thought, no hesitation. His own exhaustion, the unpaid bills, the constant worry for his sister Mia, it all vanished, consumed by a surge of pure, protective instinct. He was moving before his mind caught up, his legs carrying him toward the unfolding violence, toward a stranger in desperate need. He didn't know her name then, only that she was vulnerable, and he, a simple security guard with little to his name, but a strong sense of duty, was about to step directly into harm's way. What followed that act of raw courage, the offer that would later bloom from this terrifying moment, was so profoundly unexpected, so life-altering, it would send quiet shock waves far beyond his own existence. Liam O'Connell's world was largely confined to the climate-controlled corridors of the Oakwood Mall. For 3 long years, it had been his office, his beat, his slightly surreal universe. At 28, he was older than his boyish face suggested, an old soul burdened with responsibilities that often felt too heavy for his young shoulders. His sister, Mia, just 17, was the radiant center of his life. Her laughter was a rare and precious melody, a sound he fought daily to protect. But Mia's light was shadowed by a relentless, chronic illness, a cruel lottery draw that had saddled her with constant pain and a future riddled with uncertainty. The medical bills were a suffocating avalanche, each envelope on his worn kitchen table a stark white testament to his inadequacy. He pictured them sometimes a mountain range of debt he could never seem to scale. His small, 2-bedroom apartment, sparsely furnished with second-hand items, often felt cold, the silence punctuated only by Mia's occasional soft call from her room or the hum of the aging refrigerator. So Liam worked. He took every overtime shift offered, his body fueled by cheap coffee and sheer willpower. His dreams of completing his community college degree, of perhaps becoming a paramedic himself, had long been shelved, gathering dust like old photographs. Now, his purpose was singular. Mia, he walked his endless rounds, a uniformed sentinel in the temple of consumerism. Most shoppers barely registered his presence, a fleeting shape in their peripheral vision. But Liam, he saw them. He possessed a quiet, observant nature, a habit of noticing the small details others overlooked. He saw the tentative hope in the eyes of a young couple holding hands, the weary slump of a single parent juggling bags and a fussy toddler, the subtle tremor in the hands of an elderly man counting out coins for a coffee. These observations weren't born of judgment, but of a deep, unarticulated empathy. He'd offer a kind word, a helpful direction, a moment of patient assistance when he could. These small acts were pebbles dropped into a vast ocean, but they were his. For months, his attention had been intermittently drawn to a particular woman, Eleanor Vance. He'd eventually learned her name from a hushed conversation between 2 sales assistants at Valerian's, the mall's most opulent jewelry store. She was the epitome of old money elegance. Silver hair perfectly coiffed, tailor coats, expensive leather handbags that probably cost more than his monthly rent. She arrived like clockwork 3 times a week, always chauffeured in a sleek black sedan. She never browsed the other stores. Her sole destination was Valerian's, and yet she never seemed to purchase anything. Liam had observed her standing for long stretches before one specific display case, her expression unreadable but tinged with profound, almost tangible sorrow. He imagined stories for her, a wealthy widow, perhaps visiting a memento of a lost love. Despite her evident affluence, there was an aura of loneliness about her, a fragility beneath the polished veneer that resonated with Liam's own quiet sense of isolation. He'd offer a respectful nod if their paths crossed, a silent acknowledgement. She rarely met his gaze, her own fixed on some distant, internal landscape. He felt an odd kinship with her, this silent, grieving woman, a shared thread of human vulnerability that transcended the vast gulf of their circumstances. That Saturday afternoon, the mall throbbed with its usual frenetic pulse. The air was thick with the smell of popcorn, perfume, and the collective hum of 1,000 conversations. Liam was nearing the end of the first leg of his 16-hour double shift. His feet ached, a dull fire spreading from his soles up his calves. His mind, despite his best efforts, kept drifting to the latest letter from Mia's specialist, its clinical language barely masking the urgent need for yet another expensive, experimental medication. He was patrolling the upper concourse, his gaze sweeping over familiar storefronts. The gadget stopped, books and nooks, sunny apparel. When he saw her, Eleanor Vance. She was just stepping out of Valerian's, her gloved hand clutching her dark green alligator handbag a little tighter than usual. There was something different about her posture today, a subtle unsteadiness, a faint tremor in her shoulders that pricked at Liam's heightened awareness. She seemed smaller, more exposed than he'd ever seen her. She paused beside a large, faux marble pillar adorned with a cascade of artificial ivy, as if to gather her strength or steady her breath. And then the placid afternoon shattered. A figure, lean and predatory, detached itself from the stream of shoppers with unnerving speed. Clad in a dark, hooded sweatshirt pulled low over his face, and jeans ripped at the knees, he moved with a desperate, almost feral energy, his eyes darting left and right, assessing, targeting. He was making a beeline for Mrs. Vance. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. Before he could shout a warning, before any coherent thought could form beyond pure alarm, the man lunged. He grabbed for the alligator handbag, his movements brutal and swift. Mrs. Vance gasped, a small, terrified sound that was instantly swallowed by the mall's indifferent roar. She stumbled backward, her balance compromised, her face a mask of shock and fear. The assailant was younger than Liam, but wiry, and his eyes, now visible, held a chilling combination of desperation and aggression. He yanked hard, determined. Shoppers nearby recoiled, a few letting out startled cries, but most seemed frozen, unwilling or unable to intervene. For a horrifying moment, it was just Eleanor Vance and her attacker, isolated in a bubble of sudden violence. Liam's training, his innate sense of right and wrong, his deep-seated protectiveness, it all coalesced into a single, decisive action. Stop him. A voice screamed in his head. Protect her. The fatigue, the worry, the endless grind of his life, all of it burned away in a white-hot surge of adrenaline. He didn't consciously weigh the risks, didn't consider the man was armed, didn't think about the potential for injury to himself. There was only the imperative to act. Hey, stop right there. Security. His voice, usually calm and measured, boomed across the concourse, deeper and more authoritative than he knew he possessed. It cut through the ambient noise, turning heads, momentarily startling the assailant. The man's head snapped towards Liam, his eyes wide and feral. He gave the handbag one final, vicious wrench. Mrs. Vance cried out again, a sharper sound this time, as she lost her footing completely. She crumpled to the polished marble floor, hitting her head with a sickening thud that Liam felt in his own bones. That sound, that image of her vulnerability, propelled him forward with renewed urgency. He closed the distance in a few powerful strides, his worn boots pounding against the tile. He reached the thief just as the man, having ripped the bag free, was turning to flee. Liam launched himself forward, tackling the assailant low, around the legs, with all the force he could muster. They both crashed to the ground in a tangle of limbs, the impact jarring through Liam's body. The expensive handbag flew from the thief's grasp, skittering across the floor like a startled animal. The thief cursed, a string of furious guttural sounds, and began to thrash wildly, trying to break free. He was strong, fueled by panic and perhaps something more. A fist connected with Liam's jaw, sending a shockwave of pain through his head, stars briefly exploding behind his eyes. But Liam held on, his grip like a vice. He could hear the distant thud of other footsteps, shouts, the telltale crackle of radios as his colleagues responded. But for those few intense seconds, it was just him, wrestling with this desperate, violent man. The shouts of onlookers, a distant, muffled roar. With a final, desperate surge, the thief twisted, kicked out, and managed to wrench himself free, leaving a torn piece of his hoodie in Liam's clenched fist. He scrambled to his feet and bolted, disappearing into bewildered, parting crowd like smoke. Liam didn't waste a second in pursuit. His immediate concern was the woman on the floor. He pushed himself up, his jaw throbbing, a metallic taste in his mouth. He quickly retrieved the alligator handbag, its clasp thankfully still closed, and rushed to Eleanor Vance's side. He knelt beside her, his voice gentle despite the adrenaline still coursing through him. "Ma'am? Ma'am, are you all right? Can you hear me?" Her eyes were wide, unfocused, clouded with shock and pain. Her silver hair was disheveled, and a thin trickle of blood was beginning to well from a scrape on her temple, staining the pristine marble. My bag," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread. Her hand fluttered weakly towards where it had fallen. "It's safe, ma'am. I have it right here." Liam reassured her, placing it gently beside her. He carefully, very gently, helped her sit up, trying to shield her somewhat from the curious, concerned faces of the onlookers who were now forming a tight circle. He could feel the fine tremors running through her frail body. "We need to get you checked out. I'm calling for medical assistance right now." He spoke calmly and clearly into his shoulder radio, requesting paramedics and backup, his eyes never leaving Mrs. Vance's pale face. She looked utterly disoriented, her gaze distant. As he helped her lean more comfortably against the cool marble of the pillar, he noticed something small and metallic glinting on the floor near where she had fallen. It was an antique silver locket, its chain broken. It had evidently been dislodged from her bag during the violent struggle. The locket was open, revealing a tiny, faded black and white photograph of a smiling, kind-faced older man with gentle eyes. Liam recognized it instantly. This was the very locket she would gaze at for such long periods inside Valerian's. This wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was clearly a vessel of profound personal meaning. He picked it up carefully, his large fingers surprisingly deft, the cool metal a small, solid presence in his palm. The paramedics arrived with practiced efficiency, their calm professionalism a welcome counterpoint to the lingering tension in the air. Mrs. Vance winced as they began their examination, her face ashen. She seemed to shrink under their touch, her dignity bruised along with her body. She adamantly refused to go to the hospital, despite their gentle urging. I just want to go home," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with a weary finality. Liam stayed by her side throughout, a quiet, steady presence. He answered the questions from his supervisor and the other responding guards, providing a concise description of the assailant, all the while keeping a concerned eye on Mrs. Vance. He bought her a bottle of water from a nearby kiosk with his own money, carefully unscrewing the cap for her. He saw a flicker of awareness return to her eyes as she sipped the water, a dawning realization of what had occurred and who had helped her. The raw shock was slowly receding, replaced by a fragile kind of gratitude. when her driver, a stoic, impeccably dressed man named Arthur, a different Arthur, Liam would later learn, finally arrived, his face etched with concern, Liam gently assisted Mrs. Vance to her feet. She leaned on his arm more heavily than he would have expected, her slight weight a testament to her frailty, before she turned to leave. As her driver hovered protectively, Liam held out his closed hand. "Ma'am," he said softly, his voice low and respectful, "I believe this is yours. I found it on the floor during the commotion." He opened his palm, revealing the delicate silver locket nestled there. Eleanor Vance stared at the locket as if it were a sacred relic returned from the abyss. Her carefully constructed composure, already fractured, seemed to dissolve completely. Her eyes, the color of stormy sea, welled with sudden, overwhelming emotion. A single tear escaped, then another, tracing slow, glistening paths down her powdered cheeks. She reached out a trembling, gloved hand and took the locket, her fingers closing around it with desperate, reverent tightness. "My Arthur," she whispered, her voice thick and choked. "Oh, my dearest Arthur, thank you, young man." She looked up at Liam then, truly looked at him, her gaze piercing through his uniform, past his role as security guard. For the first time, he saw beyond the veneer of wealth and reserve. He saw a woman laid bare by grief and fear, a woman who had just been shown an unexpected, profound kindness in her moment of terror. The way she clutched that locket, pressing it to her chest, spoke volumes, conveying emotional depth that words could never capture. Liam simply nodded, a lump forming in his own throat. He felt an acute pang of empathy, understanding in that instant that he had returned something far more valuable than a piece of silver. As she was gently guided toward the mall exit by her concerned driver, Liam watched her go, the image of her tear-streaked face and the tightly clutched locket indelibly imprinted on his mind. He had a peculiar feeling, a subtle premonition, that this encounter was not yet over. The mall slowly began to resume its normal rhythm, the spill of the drama quickly absorbed by the vastness of the space. But for Liam, something fundamental had shifted. The ever-present weight of his own anxieties felt, just for a moment, a little less crushing. The following days settled back into their familiar, grinding routine, yet an undercurrent of the unexpected now hummed beneath the surface for Liam. The mall management had formally commended him in a brief, sterile meeting. There was a line in his personnel file noting his bravery and quick thinking, and a small, almost token bonus had appeared on his paycheck. It was appreciated, of course. Every dollar counted, but it felt oddly hollow, almost insignificant when weighed against the raw intensity of the event and the deep emotion he had witnessed in Mrs. Vance's eyes. He found himself replaying the incident in his mind during his long, solitary patrols. The thief's desperate lunge, the terror that had flashed across Mrs. Vance's face, the sickening thud of her fall, the way her hand had closed around that precious locket. He caught himself scanning the area near Valerian's more frequently than usual, a knot of unspoken concern tightening in his chest when Eleanor Vance didn't appear at her customary times. He hoped she was recovering, not just from the physical bruises and the scrape on her temple, but from the deeper, invisible wounds of fear and violation. He wondered about the man in the locket, her Arthur, and the story held within that small silver frame. Miles away, in a grand, silent house nestled in a wealthy, tree-lined suburb, Eleanor Vance was indeed recovering, though her recuperation was more emotional than physical. The attempted robbery had undeniably shaken her to her core, stripping away her carefully maintained composure and leaving her feeling vulnerable in a way she hadn't since her husband's passing. But it was Liam O'Connell's actions, not just his immediate courageous intervention, but his subsequent quiet consideration, particularly the gentle return of Arthur's locket, that resonated most profoundly within her. That locket was her most treasured possession, a tangible link to the 37 years of love and companionship she had shared with her Arthur. It held the last photograph taken of him before the illness had begun its slow, cruel theft. To her, it was beyond price. In a world where she often felt people saw only her surname, her bank balance, or her potential as a benefactor, Liam had seen her, a frightened, elderly woman in distress. He had acted without a moment's hesitation, without any apparent thought of reward, his concern genuine and palpable. Eleanor was a woman who had, over the years, become accustomed to a certain degree of suspicion. Grief had made her reclusive, and her considerable wealth had, unintentionally, erected invisible barriers around her heart. She had encountered her share of individuals attempting to curry favor, their motives often transparently self-serving. But this young security guard, he was cut from a different cloth. She found her thoughts returning to him frequently, to the weariness she had glimpsed in his eyes even before the incident, a profound fatigue that seemed to go beyond mere physical tiredness. It was a weariness she recognized, a reflection of her own, albeit born from different sorrows. His was a weariness of struggle, hers the weariness of loss. A growing sense of profound gratitude, mingled with a nascent curiosity, prompted her to make a discreet inquiry. She possessed considerable resources, and it did not take long for her discreet and highly efficient personal assistant, a woman named Miss Albright, to gather some pertinent information about Liam O'Connell. The report was concise but illuminating. It detailed his long hours at the mall, his sparsely furnished apartment in a less affluent part of the city, and, most significantly, it highlighted his younger sister, Mia, and the crippling burden of her ongoing medical expenses for a rare autoimmune disorder. A wave of something akin to shame, sharp and unwelcome, washed over Eleanor. She, who possessed so much material comfort, had initially felt that familiar flicker of caution, of societal distance, towards this young man who possessed so little in worldly goods, yet offered her a richness of spirit she hadn't encountered in a long time. Her Arthur, her clear-sighted, compassionate Arthur, had always possessed an uncanny ability to see into the heart of people. He had often remarked, in his quiet, thoughtful way, that true wealth wasn't measured by the figures in a bank statement, but by the depth and generosity of one's spirit. In his later years, after retiring from the successful business he had built from scratch, he had dedicated himself to a form of quiet, almost invisible philanthropy. He sought out individuals he encountered in daily life, people who demonstrated quiet courage, unwavering integrity, or extraordinary kindness, often in the face of their own significant adversities. It was a deeply personal mission, known only to Eleanor and a handful of trusted confidants. He would have admired Liam immensely, she thought with a pang of certainty. Arthur would have recognized the unblemished goodness in him instantly. A plan began to slowly crystallize in Eleanor's mind, a way to truly honor Arthur's enduring legacy and offer a meaningful, life-altering thank you to the young man who had protected more than just her handbag. He had, in a very real sense, protected a piece of her fractured heart. Almost a week to the day after the traumatic incident, Liam was on his afternoon break, nursing a lukewarm coffee in the noisy staff canteen, when his supervisor, Mr. Henderson, approached him. Mr. Henderson, a man who usually radiated an air of harried importance, looked unusually flustered, his tie askew. "O'Connell," he said, his voice a little breathless. "There's a rather important visitor here to see you. Mrs. Eleanor Vance. She's waiting for you in my office." Liam's heart gave a sudden, perceptible lurch. Mrs. Vance? Here at the mall? Specifically to see him? A jumble of emotions, apprehension, curiosity, a touch of anxiety, swirled within him. Had he done something wrong in his report? Was there some further detail about the robbery she needed to convey? He nodded mutely, wiped his mouth with a paper napkin, and followed Mr. Henderson out of the canteen, smoothing down the front of his uniform jacket self-consciously. But Mrs. Vance wasn't waiting in Mr. Henderson's cramped, utilitarian office. with its overflowing filing cabinets and a lingering smell of stale coffee. Instead, Mr. Henderson, looking slightly awed himself, led Liam to the Courtyard Cafe, a more upscale, quieter spot nestled in a less trafficked wing of the mall. It was known for its comfortable, deep armchairs, its soothing classical music, and its surprisingly good pastries. Eleanor Vance was seated at a secluded corner table, a delicate china cup of tea, seemingly untouched, resting before her on the polished mahogany. She looked different today. Still impeccably elegant, of course, in a soft cashmere twin-set the color of lavender, but the severe lines of grief and tension around her mouth seemed to have softened. Her eyes, when they met his, held less of the guarded sorrow he was used to seeing and more of a gentle, appraising warmth. She offered a small, almost shy smile as he approached. "Mr. O'Connell," she said, her voice much steadier, richer than the last time he'd heard it. "Please do sit down." Liam sat, perching somewhat awkwardly on the edge of the plush velvet armchair. It felt strange to be sitting opposite her like this, an equal rather than a uniform figure in the background of her life. "Mrs. Vance, it's very good to see you looking so well." "Thank you, Liam." "May I call you Liam?" He nodded, a little surprised by the informality. "I am recovering, yes, thanks in no small part to your bravery and quick thinking." She paused, taking a slow, deliberate sip of her tea, her gaze thoughtful. "I want to thank you again, properly, for your actions last Saturday. What you did, it was exceptionally courageous. You showed remarkable selflessness." Liam felt a familiar flush creep up his neck. He wasn't used to praise, especially not of this magnitude. "I was just doing my job, ma'am," he mumbled, looking down at his hands. Eleanor smiled, a knowing, gentle expression. "Perhaps, but you went far beyond what most would consider the mere execution of a job description. You placed yourself directly in harm's way for a complete stranger. And afterward, you showed such remarkable kindness and consideration." She reached into her new handbag, a tasteful leather satchel in a deep burgundy, and withdrew a simple yet elegant cream-colored envelope. Liam's mind raced. A reward? A check? He hadn't expected it, hadn't truly wanted it. The profound gratitude he'd seen in her eyes when he'd returned Arthur's locket had felt like reward enough, a moment of pure human connection that had resonated deeply within him. But Eleanor didn't slide the envelope across the table immediately. Instead, her gaze softened further, becoming almost wistful, as if she were looking at something far beyond the confines of the cafe. "My late husband, Arthur," she began, her voice now imbued with a gentle tenderness, "was a man who believed with all his heart in the inherent goodness of people. He often said that the greatest investments one could make were not in stocks or bonds or property, but in human potential, in acts of kindness, in the quiet courage of ordinary individuals." Liam listened intently, captivated by the quiet sincerity in her voice, though still unsure where this conversation was leading. He felt a prickle of anticipation, a sense that something significant was about to unfold. He established a private charitable foundation many years ago. Eleanor continued, her voice dropping slightly, as if sharing a cherished secret. "Its purpose is quite specific, quite personal. It's designed to recognize and offer tangible support to individuals who demonstrate extraordinary courage or profound compassion, particularly those who do so whilst facing their own significant personal hardships. People who, despite their own burdens and struggles, choose to lift others up to make a positive difference in someone else's life." She looked directly at Liam then, her eyes, clear and direct, holding profound and utterly unexpected light. "After Arthur passed away, I became the sole administrator of this foundation. It has been my quiet work, my private solace, to continue his precious legacy, to seek out those unassuming heroes and quiet champions of kindness in our midst." Liam felt his breath catch in his throat. He was beginning to understand, or at least to glimpse the outline of what she was implying. But the sheer scale of it, the incredible, almost fantastical nature of it, was so far beyond anything he could have ever imagined that his mind struggled to fully grasp its meaning. Eleanor's voice remained soft, yet carried an undeniable weight, a quiet authority. The world can often feel like a cold, indifferent place, Liam. But then someone like you comes along, someone who acts purely from the heart, with no thought of personal gain or reward, and reminds us all that there is still so much good, so much light to be found. Arthur always used to tell me, find the helpers, Eleanor, and when you find them, make sure you help them in return. Liam, you are, without a shadow of a doubt, one of those helpers. Her words hung in the air between them, settling around Liam like a warm, unbelievable cloak. He was vaguely aware of the life of the mall continuing around them, visible through the cafe's large picture window. Shoppers laden with bags hurrying past, teenagers laughing, the distant, cheerful music from a children's ride, and it all felt strangely distant, like a movie playing on a muted screen. He felt as though he were in a protected bubble, a small pocket of stillness and silence, where something truly monumental was about to occur. The very ordinariness of the backdrop, the familiar mall setting where he toiled day in and day out, somehow made the extraordinary nature of this quiet, intense conversation even more potent. Eleanor Vance finally, gently, slid the cream-colored envelope across the polished mahogany tabletop. It lay there between them, unassuming in its simplicity, yet it seemed to pulse with an almost palpable energy, a silent promise of transformation. Liam, she said, her voice now imbued with a warmth so profound it seemed to reach deep inside him, thawing anxieties he hadn't even realized he was still carrying. The Arthur Vance Foundation would like to make a significant contribution towards your sister, Mia, and her ongoing medical care. Liam's eyes, wide with stunned disbelief, shot to hers. Mia, he whispered, his voice hoarse, barely audible even to himself. How did you know about Mia? A faint, knowing smile touched Eleanor's lips. We have our ways of finding out what matters. Liam. Yes, Mia. We understand the nature of her illness, the relentless financial strain of her treatments, the constant worry that you carry on her behalf, day in and day out. The Foundation would like, first and foremost, to cover all of Mia's current outstanding medical bills. Every single one. And she paused, allowing the full weight of her next words to sink in, her gaze holding it steadily. We would like to establish a comprehensive, ongoing fund to cover all her future medical needs. All of them, for as long as she requires treatment and specialized care. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Liam stared at her, then at the innocuous envelope, then back at her kind, earnest face. The bustling sounds of mall, the clatter of cups, the murmur of distant conversations, all faded into an indistinct, far-off hum. All he could hear was the frantic pounding of his own heart, and Eleanor Vance's quiet, incredible, life-shattering words echoing in the sudden stillness of his mind. All of them? He managed to choke out, the 2 words of monumental effort, each one heavy with the weight of years of struggle. All of them, Eleanor confirmed, her eyes soft with empathy and understanding. The very best specialists, any necessary procedures, all prescribed medications, therapies, assistive equipment, whatever Mia needs to have the best possible quality of life without the constant shadow of financial burden. No more struggling with overdue notices. Liam. No more sleepless nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering how you'll possibly afford her next round of treatment. Tears, hot and unexpected, welled in Liam's eyes. He blinked rapidly, trying to hold them back, but it was a losing battle. He thought of Mia's brave, often pain-filled smiles, of the dreams she still cherished despite her limitations, of the crushing weight of financial dread that had been his unwelcome, constant companion for so many years. To have that immense, suffocating weight suddenly, miraculously lifted. It was like being able to draw a full, deep breath for the very first time in what felt like an eternity. A single sob escaped him, quickly stifled, but the tears flowed freely now, unabashed, tracing hot paths down his cheeks. He didn't even attempt to wipe them away. I don't know what to say," he stammered, his voice thick with unshed emotion. I can't possibly. This is too much." Eleanor reached across the small table and gently, reassuringly, placed her slender, age-spotted hand over his. Her touch was surprisingly firm, deeply comforting. "Say you'll accept it, Liam," she urged softly, her voice like a balm. "Say you'll allow someone to help you, just as you so selflessly, so bravely helped me. This isn't charity, Liam. Please understand that. Consider it an investment by the Foundation in a remarkably brave and compassionate young man, and in his wonderfully deserving sister." She allowed him a few moments to absorb the shock, the sheer, breathtaking magnitude of her offer, the chatter from the nearby tables, the distant jingle of the mall's ambient music, the shoppers passing by the cafe window, oblivious of the quiet miracle unfolding within. It all seemed surreal, a hazy backdrop to this intensely personal, life-altering moment. Some of the other patrons were indeed glancing over now, their curiosity piqued perhaps by his visible tears, by Mrs. Vance's earnest, leaning posture. The full details were unknown to them, of course, but the scene itself, the stark visual contrast between the uniformed security guard, visibly overcome, and the elegantly dressed wealthy benefactor, her expression one of profound kindness, was enough to cause a subtle ripple of speculation. This, Liam thought fleetingly, this quiet, almost unbelievable act of targeted generosity, this was a true shock that would astound anyone who knew even a fraction of his story. Then, as if this incredible gift were not already overwhelming enough, Eleanor added something more, something that spoke not just to his needs, but to his inherent worth. Arthur always believed in empowering people, not just providing resources, she said, her gaze thoughtful and appraising. He believed in giving people purpose, a way to utilize their unique strengths. You have a keen eye for detail, Liam. You're exceptionally observant. You notice things, nuances of human behavior, that others often miss. These are qualities my husband valued very highly. She paused, a thoughtful expression on her face. The Foundation, in addition to its larger commitments, also supports many smaller, local acts of kindness and community initiatives, helping struggling families, supporting grassroots projects, assisting individuals who are quietly making a difference in their own small ways. It can often be quite challenging to identify truly deserving recipients, to vet their needs with the necessary discretion, compassion, and thoroughness. She leaned forward slightly, her expression earnest. I would like to offer you a part-time, generously salaried position with the Foundation, Liam, if you would be interested, working alongside me, helping to identify, assess, and manage these smaller projects and individual cases. Your unique insights, gleaned from your years of working here, from seeing everyday life unfold with all its complexities, would be utterly invaluable. It would mean you could significantly reduce your hours here at the mall, perhaps even transition away from security work entirely if you wished. You could spend more quality time with Mia, be more present for her, and still contribute in a deeply meaningful, fulfilling way. Liam was utterly floored, speechless. First, the complete and total liberation from the crushing weight of Mia's medical debts, a gift so immense it still felt unreal. And now this, an offer respected work of purpose, of utilizing his quiet, often overlooked strengths in a new and profoundly impactful way. It was more than he could ever have dared to dream. The relief was so profound, so all-encompassing, it was almost dizzying. He looked at Eleanor Vance, at this extraordinary woman who had, in the space of a single hour, redrawn the entire map of his future, transforming it from a landscape of constant struggle into one of bright, unimaginable possibility. Mrs. Vance. Eleanor. He corrected himself, emboldened by the genuine warmth and respect in her eyes. Yes, I accept both offers. And thank you. Those words feel so small, so inadequate for what you've done, but thank you from the very bottom of my heart. Thank you. You've given Mia her future back. You've given me a kind of peace of mind I haven't known in years, perhaps ever. Eleanor's smile was genuine now, radiant, lighting up her entire face. Arthur would have been so incredibly pleased, Liam, she said, her voice soft but firm. He would have liked you very, very much. He always said that the best way to honor his memory was to keep the ripples of kindness spreading outward, touching as many lives as possible. She squeezed his hand gently one last time before withdrawing hers. Well then, Liam, it seems we have much good work to do together. We'll make the world a little brighter. You and I, one act of kindness, one supported life, at a time. The entire mall hadn't literally stopped in its tracks and erupted in applause, of course. But for Liam O'Connell, it felt as though his entire personal world had been gloriously, wonderfully, shockingly upended for the better. Right there in the heart of the very place he patrolled day in and day out, a place that had once symbolized his limitations, but now represented the dawn of boundless opportunity. The weeks and months that followed were a whirlwind of joyous disbelief, profound gratitude, and tangible, life-altering change for Liam. True to her word, Eleanor Vance and the Arthur Vance Foundation moved with quiet, compassionate efficiency. Mia's mountain of outstanding medical bills simply vanished, paid in full. Appointments were swiftly scheduled with leading specialists in her rare condition, physicians whose expertise had previously been far beyond their financial reach. A new, more promising treatment plan was formulated, and for the first time in years, Liam saw a consistent spark of real, unclouded hope in his sister's eyes, a light that mirrored the newfound lightness in his own heart. The oppressive, suffocating weight of financial anxiety that he carried for so long had lifted completely, replaced by an almost giddy sense of freedom and possibility. He still walked his remaining, much-reduced rounds of the Oakwood Mall for a transitional period, but now there was an undeniable spring in his step, a genuine, easy smile that frequently reached his eyes. His colleagues noticed the change immediately, the quiet transformation from perpetually worried, weary young man to someone who radiated a calm, happy confidence. Whispers, of course, circulated to the mall's tight-knit employee community. Curious murmurs about the distinguished, silver-haired older woman who now occasionally met with Liam in the courtyard cafe, their heads bent together in earnest, focused conversation. The story of his bravery during the attempted mugging had made the rounds, earning him nods of respect. But the true, astonishing extent of Mrs. Vance's subsequent generosity remained a more private marvel. Those profoundly positive effects on Liam were plain for all to see. He embraced his new part-time role with the Arthur Vance Foundation with enthusiasm and dedication that impressed Eleanor deeply. She became a mentor, a guide, and, unexpectedly, a cherished friend. Liam discovered he had a natural aptitude for the work, his years of quiet observation and his innate empathy providing a unique and valuable perspective. He found immense, heartfelt satisfaction in helping to identify small, underfunded charities or deserving individuals who, like he and Mia had been, were facing silent, overwhelming struggles. He traveled to different parts of the city, met with people from all walks of life, listened to their stories, and helped Eleanor channel the Foundation's resources to where they could make the most significant difference. He saw firsthand how carefully targeted, thoughtful kindness could change lives, offering not just a temporary reprieve, but genuine hand-up, fostering dignity and hope. For Eleanor, this new chapter brought an unexpected and welcome balm to the persistent ache of her own grief. Working alongside Liam, seeing the world through his fresh, compassionate eyes, reignited a sense of connection and purpose she thought had been irrevocably lost with Arthur's passing. Liam's youthful energy, his unwavering integrity, and his inherent goodness were infectious. Theirs was an unlikely but deeply resonant friendship, forged in a moment of shared crisis and solidified by shared values of compassion and service, effortlessly bridging the wide gap of age, background, and circumstance. She found herself genuinely looking forward to their meetings, to the quiet, shared satisfaction of continuing Arthur's benevolent work with such a capable, insightful, and kind-hearted young partner. The silver locket containing Arthur's photograph still rested near her heart each day, but now it felt less like a solitary symbol of sorrow and more like a cherished reminder of enduring love and a beautiful, ever-expanding legacy of kindness they were building together in his name. The Oakwood Mall continued its ceaseless daily rhythm, a bustling microcosm of life's myriad joys, mundane routines, and silent struggles. But for Liam O'Connell, it was no longer just a place of employment, a monotonous backdrop to his worries. It was a stage where his life had taken an extraordinary, almost miraculous turn. One impulsive act of courage, one instinctual choice to prioritize empathy over indifference in the face of danger, hadn't just saved a handbag or prevented a more serious injury. It had set in motion a cascading series of positive changes, reaffirming his quiet belief that even in the most ordinary of settings, amidst the hustle and bustle of everyday life, the most extraordinary acts of human goodness and connection can and do unfold. The news of Eleanor's incredible generosity towards Mia and her subsequent offer of employment to Liam did eventually ripple outwards, first through the mall staff, then further, becoming a quiet legend, a testament to how one good deed can inspire so much more. It was a powerful, heartwarming reminder that true wealth isn't measured in bank balances or material possessions, but in the richness of the human spirit, in the connections we forge, the burdens we willingly help to lighten for one another, and the resilient hope that even a single, selfless act of kindness can ignite in a world that so often feels starved for it. Liam knew, with a profound certainty that warmed him to his very core, that sometimes risking something of yourself for a stranger could indeed lead to a return so profoundly generous, so shockingly beautiful. It had the power to heal not just one life, but sow seeds of hope that would blossom in countless, unexpected ways. And that, he realized with a deep sense of peace and gratitude, was the most astonishing and deeply satisfying reward of all.